Unbroken Chapter 2. Run Like Mad. The rehabilitation of Louis Zamperini began with the key. It was 1931 and Louis was 14. While in a locksmith's shop, he heard someone say, if you put any key in any lock, it has a 1 in 50 chance of fitting. Inspired, he began collecting keys and trying locks. He had no luck until he tried his house key on the back door of the Torrance High Gym. When basketball season began, no one understood why the stands were full when so few tickets had been sold. Finally, someone discovered Louis sneaking kids in the back door. Louis was hauled to the principal, who punished him by barring him from athletic and social activities. Louis, who never joined anything, was indifferent. Pete headed straight to the principal. Louis craved attention, Pete told him, but had never won it in the form of praise, so he sought it in the form of punishment. If Louis was recognized for doing something right, he'd turn his life around. Pete asked the principal to let Louis join a sport. When the principal refused, Pete asked if he could live with allowing Louis to fail. It was a cheeky thing for a boy to say to his principal, but Pete, who was the one kid who could get away with such a remark, the principal gave in. Pete had big plans for Louis. A senior in 1931-32, Pete was a track star. Having set the school's mile record of 5 minutes 6 seconds, watching Louis, whose gate-away speed was his saving grace. Pete thought he saw the same talent. He wanted to make a runner out of him. In the end, it wasn't Pete who got Louis onto a track. It was Louis's weakness for girls. In February, some girls began assembling a team for an interclass track meet, and long-legged Louis looked like he could run. The girls worked their charms, and Louis found himself on the track, barefoot. When everyone ran, he followed, churning along with jimmying elbows. As he labored home last, he heard tittering. Gasping and humiliated, he ran straight out the track and hid under the bleachers. The coach muttered that that kid belonged anywhere but in the foot race. From then on, Pete was all over Louis, herding him out to train and riding his bike behind him, whacking him with the stick. Resentful, Louis dragged his feet, belly ached, and quit. Pete made him keep going. He entered Louis in races, and Louis started running. Pete was right about Louis's talent, but being forced to run made Louis defiant. At night, he listened to the train's whistle, and one day in the summer of 1932, he couldn't bear it any longer. It began over a chore Louis's father asked him to do. Louis resisted. A spat ensued, and Louis threw clothes into a bag and stormed toward the front door. His parents ordered him to stay. Louis was beyond persuasion. As he walked out, his mother rushed to the kitchen and emerged with a sandwich. Louis stuffed it in his bag and left. He was on the front walk when he heard his name called. When he turned, there was his father, grim faced, $2 in his outstretched hand. It was a lot of money for a man whose pay didn't last a week. Feeling a swell of guilt, Louis took it and walked away. He rounded up a friend, and together they hitchhiked to Los Angeles, broke into a car, and slept on the seats. The next day, they jumped the train, climbed onto the roof, and rode north. The trip was a nightmare. The boys got locked in a boxcar so hot they were frantic to escape. Louis found a metal bar, climbed on his friend's shoulders, pried open a roof vent, squirmed out, and helped his friend through. Then they were discovered by the railroad detectives, who forced them to jump from the moving train at gunpoint. For several days, they walked. One night, as they sat in a rail field, filthy, sunburned, shivering, and wet, sharing a stolen can of beans, Louis remembered the money in his father's hand, the fear in his mother's eyes as she gave him a sandwich. He stood up and headed home. When Louis came in the door, Louise threw her arms around him, held him, led him in the kitchen, and gave him a cookie. Anthony came home, saw Louis, and sank into a chair, his face soft with relief. Louis went upstairs, dropped into bed, and whispered his surrender to Pete. He was going to be a runner, and he was going to go all out. In the summer of 1932, Louis did almost nothing but run. On a friend's invitation, he went to a cabin in California, high desert. Each morning he rose with the sun, picked up his rifle, and jogged into the sagebrush. He ran over hills, over deserts, through gullies. He chased bands of horses, trying in vain to snatch a fistful of mane and swing aboard. On his run bike each afternoon, he shot a rabbit for supper. In the morning, he rose to run again. For the first time in his life, he wasn't running from something or to something, not for anyone or in spite of anyone. He ran because it was what his body wished to do. All he felt was peace. He ran home with a mania for running. On Pete's orders, he ran everywhere. He ran his entire paper route for the Torrance Herald, to and from school, and to the beach and back, veering onto neighbors' lawns to hurdle bushes. He gave up drinking and smoking. To expand his lung capacity, he ran to a public pool, dove to the bottom, grabbed the drain plug, and floated there, hanging on a little longer each time. Eventually, he could stay underwater for 3 minutes and 45 seconds. People kept jumping in to save him. He also found a role model. Trike was hugely popular, and its elite performers were household names. Among them was Kansas University miler Glenn Cunningham. As a boy, Cunningham was in a schoolhouse explosion, and his lower body was burned so badly that a month and a half passed before he could sit up. Once he could stand, he pushed himself about by leaning on a chair, his legs floundering. Eventually, hanging off the tail of a horse named Paint, he began to run, a gait that initially caused him excruciating pain. In a few years, he was racing, obliterating his opponents by the length of home stretch. By 1932, he was a national sensation, soon to be acclaimed the greatest miler in American history. Louis had his hero. In the fall of 1932, Pete entered Compton, a tuition free junior college where he became a star runner. In the afternoons, he commuted home to coach Louis, perfecting his stride and teaching him strategy. Pete thought the spirits Louis had been running were too short. Pete thought the sprints Louis had been running were too short. He'd be a miler, just like Cunningham. In California, winter-born kids started new grades in January. And the first day of 1933, just before he turned 16, Louis began 10th grade. When the trike season began, he set out to see what training had done for him. Competing in black silk shorts that his mother had made from a skirt, he won an 880-yard race, breaking the school record, co-held by Pete by more than 2 seconds. A week later, he ran a field of milers off their feet, stopping the watches in 5 minutes and 3 seconds, 3 seconds faster than Pete's record. Week after week, he kept winning and getting faster. By late April, his mile time was down to 4 minutes 42 seconds. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Read a local paper. Can that guy fly? Yes, this means that Zamperini guy. Louis streaked through the season unbeaten and tested. When he ran out of high schoolers to whip, he took on Pete and 13 other college runners in a 2 mile race at Compton. Though he'd never even trained at the distance, he won by 50 yards. Next, he tried the 2 mile in the UCLA Southern California cross country meet, running so effortlessly he couldn't feel his feet touching the ground. He took the early lead and kept pulling away. At the halfway point, he was an eighth of a mile ahead, and observers began speculating on when the boy in the black shorts would collapse. Louis didn't collapse. After he flew past the finish, rewriting the course record, he looked back. None of the other runners was even in sight. Louis had won by more than a quarter of a mile. He left as if he would faint. He felt as if he would faint, but it wasn't from exertion. It was from the realization of what he was. This is the quick write slide. I have provided a quick write format, also standard based questions. In each question, you must answer in the quick write format, meaning you need to restate the question with an answer. That will be your claim. Provide claim evidence, which is text evidence from the text that supports your claim, and commentary. Commentary is your opinion or your connection to the information that you wrote in your claim and text evidence. Make sure you use transitions and analysis flowchart words. Analysis flowchart words are words such as show, express, illustrate, convey. All of those words are verbs, they show action. Your standard based questions. Number one, what is the central idea of chapter two? Number two, how can chapter two be used to understand the author's message? Number three, what are the keywords and phrases in chapter two that give insight or show the central message of chapter two?